In many US cities, highways were built with wide medians so that a rapid transit line can be built. This was true in Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles. But since Robert Moses hated public transportation, New York City highways have no wide median for mass transit. However, once Moses was out of power, there were some plans to remedy that mistake. In the 1968 Program for Action, in conjunction with widening Horace Harding Expressway, a wide median would be built for a future Northeast Queens line. However, the fiscal crisis halted those plans, and today there are no wide medians for said train line in New York City. And highway median stations are pretty bad. Public transit works best with density. After all, if you can walk to a train station to go somewhere, you will do that. Highways are not known to work with density, as they create suburban sprawl. This means more often than not, you will be driving to a station, park your car, and then take the train. At that point, you would just drive straight into downtown to avoid that transfer. Density can be built around these highways, but they are harder to do, as highways bring elevated levels of air and noise pollution, which people don't want. Also, highway median stations are loud and hostile, as anyone waiting on the Congress branch will tell you that. So given all of these facts, should New York City build highway median stations? Well, I do stand by what I said, but given the fact that we're talking about New York City, where it doesn't follow the rules of other US cities, I think it is worth analyzing if median stations should be built on a few expressways. Let's start with the expressways I think absolutely deserves a rail line, the aforementioned Horace Harding Expressway line. Despite all the facts I just laid out with highways, the area around the LIE has none of that. Yes, you do see a ton of single-family homes here, but you also see mid-rises, high-rises, schools, universities, malls, and shops all around the expressway. The bus ridership here is nothing to scoff at, as in 2019, the Q17 and Q88, the two buses that serve this corridor, sees 26,000 riders daily. For reference, Woodhaven Boulevard's Q52 and Q53 sees 30,000 riders daily, meaning the ridership here rivals that of one of the busiest corridors in New York City. There also aren't good alternative routings for the Horace Harding Expressway line. The right-of-way of the Central Railroad of Long Island, today's Casino Corridor Park, is way too far from that density, meaning the line would see limited ridership. The Booth Memorial Avenue alignment would be a little better, as it directly serves a hospital, but other than that, it would see the same problem as Casino Corridor Park. It would be way too far from that density, as half of the catchment area would be the Casino Corridor Park. 46th Avenue is way too far north, and Jewel Avenue is way too far south. Finally, there is no adjacent street wide enough or long enough that can take a full-on subway, meaning that despite all of the factors working against median highway stations, I approve of an elevated median highway line on the Long Island Expressway. Under the 7 train project, a branch of the 7 train would serve stations between Casino Boulevard and Springfield Boulevard. The reason why is simple. By looking at census data, riders here are also heading to Flushing, and the 7's routing perfectly serves that. The 6 train extension to Co-op City is something that both the MTA and railfanners wanted for decades. As part of the 1968 Program for Action, the MTA either proposed branching Dyer at Baychester Avenue or extending the 6. In the end, extending the 6 won out. But because of the fiscal crisis, that project was shelved. Today, the 6 to Co-op City makes too much sense. It will directly serve the dense neighborhood known as Co-op City, which is currently a transit desert. But in order to serve it, the 6 will need to be on a highway. There is simply nothing you can do here to avoid a highway. As to the east of Pelham Bay Park is the infamous Cross Bronx Expressway. If you go any further east, you will have to curve it right back onto the Cross Bronx because of multiple high-rises in the area. A station will be placed inside the highway at Gun Hill Road. Although the station is located inside a freeway interchange, all of South Co-op City will be within walking distance of the 6. After that station, there are alternatives, like continuing the line on the Cross Bronx, or making it run on Co-op City Boulevard. Since I see good arguments for either alignment, I will let the comments sort this one out. Now that we talked about expressway lines I would want to see, I am going to talk about expressway lines that I don't think are worth it. And let's start with a line to LaGuardia. You might remember the infamous backwards air train to LaGuardia. That was a dumb idea, and I am grateful that the Port Authority canceled that project. However, an alternative was floated, which is to branch the Astoria line via Grand Central Parkway to LaGuardia. Although I think this is way better than the backwards air train, I don't think this alignment is great. First off, in order to branch Astoria, you have to be aware that there is another elevated structure called the Hell Gate Bridge. This means any additional L would have to soar hundreds of feet into the sky, which will make it a non-starter. There is also the fact that you branched Astoria, which means you created this awkward one-station stub, which historically does not have good precedent. Just look at what happened at 145th Street and Bronx Park, the latter of which has been demolished due to low ridership. At that point, continue the line after Ditmars and into Astoria. Not only would this be better, but also you get to leverage the Con Ed parking lots for a future Astoria yard. Now, some of you will bring up NIMBYism, but the demographics of the neighborhood has changed. The neighborhood has gotten more progressive and more open to public transit improvements. Search up what happened in a Democratic primary in 2018. Before Van Wyck was an expressway, it was a boulevard, similar to many expressways in Queens, and the IND wanted to build a branch of QEL underneath it. Since then, things have changed. Van Wyck is now an expressway, but also has an elevated line, the JFK Air Train. Now, I have heard that the air train was designed so that one day the LIRR can take it over. But even if they can do that, I still don't think it is worth adding extra infill stations so that it becomes more of a local rail line. The Van Wyck has mostly single-family homes, with a few shops mixed in between. The Q9, the bus that serves part of the Van Wyck, only sees 4,500 riders a day, a far cry from the 26,000 seen on Horace Harding Expressway. At that point, you are wasting tax dollars that can be going towards something else. If we had endless money, I would send the E somewhere else, and turn the entirety of the LIRR network into regional rail. But we don't live in that world, so I think realistically, the best option would be a takeover of the Atlantic branch. And honestly, it isn't that bad. The branch is positioned between two heavily used bus corridors, Guy Brewer at 17,000 and Merrick at 34,000. The Archer Avenue line sits right below the branch, meaning all that is needed are infill stations in a portal. Finally, a new yard can be built at Gwen Ifill Park, which can decongest the overcrowded Jamaica Yard. We already talked about the Grand Central Parkway about LaGuardia, but Grand Central Parkway goes on for much longer than just a few miles, and extends into Eastern Queens. Given that this area of Eastern Queens is poorly served by the subway, a highway median line here would be good, right? Not really. Looking at the highway, it is almost just single-family homes. There is a school and a university near the highway, but that is all you get. This makes it an unideal place for a transit line. A better alignment would be Union Turnpike. There is much more density near that road, like Windsor Park, and hosts the Q46, a popular bus feeder route in Eastern Queens. Or extending the F to Springfield Boulevard and beyond can help, as Hillside Avenue sees a ton of bus feeder routes coming in from all over southeastern Queens. Extending the F will cut down on travel times here, and serve the density on Hillside directly. Although the Bronx is covered well by transit lines, there are still 3 distinct transit deserts. 2 of the transit deserts, Central Bronx and portions of northeastern Bronx, have a commuter line perfect for turning into regional rail. I have done multiple videos on Metro North Regional Rail, so in the interest of time, I will skip them. However, Throgs Neck doesn't have any commuter rail lines or any rail line in general, making it truly the last transit desert of the Bronx. This means riders have to crowd onto buses to take the 6. You know, a train that has endless capacity and is never overcrowded. This makes a line at Throgs Neck even more valuable. Throgs Neck has the Bruckner Expressway, so put the rail line here, right? Well, this is something I was debating for a while, and here are my thoughts. Bruckner Expressway is way too close to the 6. By bus, it is an extra 6 minutes, and that is the furthest distance you can get. This means by putting the line here, you only save at most 6 minutes one way. That isn't bad, but we can do much better. By putting the line deeper into Throggs Neck, like at Lafayette Avenue or Story Avenue, the time saved is 8 to 10 minutes by bus. You also hit up more density, as although Bruckner has a giant housing project, Lafayette Avenue also serves that same giant housing project and also makes the other housing projects deep in Throggs Neck within walking distance to a train. Therefore, I would pick Lafayette Avenue to serve Throggs Neck. The Bronx does extremely well with radial lines. However, with every borough, the Bronx has poor circumferential transit. Given the strength of cross-Bronx trips, such as the BX6 and BX12, a subway or grade-separated LRT would do wonders for cross-Bronx trips. But where do we put it? After all, the Bronx is notoriously hilly, and the elevation changes more times than the 5 train. Some people want to put the line near the Cross-Bronx Expressway. After all, the areas near the Cross-Bronx are extremely dense, which is why Robert Moses chose this location. Although the bus route that runs parallel to the Cross-Bronx, the BX36, sees 21,000 riders daily, using the Cross-Bronx is an imperfect solution. There are a number of missed connections, like Metro North, where Tremont Station is 3 minutes away at best from the line, making transfers a headache. Also, White Plains has no station near the expressway, so stop consolidation would need to happen. And looking at this track, it is moderately curved, which will pose a challenge. Finally, the line completely misses one of the biggest employment centers in all of the Bronx, near the Hutchinson River Parkway. I believe a superior Cross-Bronx subway or LRT is on Fordham Road, Pelham Parkway. The bus that operates here, the BX12, sees almost twice the ridership of the BX36, at 40,000 riders daily. It also has better transfers, such as the aforementioned White Plains Road connection at Pelham Parkway and the Metro North connection at Fordham Road. Finally, the Fordham Road line would serve the aforementioned job center near the Hutchinson River Parkway, which accounts for 10,000 Bronx jobs. Yes, this alignment will require tunnels, which will make it more expensive, but the high ridership that you will see on Fordham Road will more than justify the cost than the Cross Bronx. Everyone knows how bad transit is on Staten Island. There is the Staten Island Railway, which runs every 15 minutes, and a local bus network. Every plan into Staten Island looks into the first part of the equation, which is some sort of river crossing to Staten Island. But what about the second half, which is bringing the line inland? After all, the majority of Staten Island residents don't live near St. George or Grassmere. So, what about the Staten Island Expressway? The Staten Island Expressway is positioned towards the center of the island, which means on paper, this is one of the best locations to put a new train line to Staten Island. However, people don't live on the center of Staten Island. They instead live on the northern and eastern portions of the island. The area around the Staten Island Expressway, just like every expressway, is your typical suburban sprawl. However, if you go further north of the island, say Forest Avenue, you see more density. Yes, there are more parking lots here, but also there's more mixed-use zoning here, where homes and stores are within minutes of each other. Also, given the fact that the S48 and S98 is the third most used bus route in Staten Island, and that the only 2 bus lines that exceed the S48 and S98 link to Brooklyn, this is the best place to put it. Well, best place to put it given the circumstances of Staten Island. So what is the lesson of highway median lines? The majority of the time, there is an alternative alignment that works well. For example, instead of putting the line on Cross Bronx Expressway, Fordham Road would be a better pick. Same thing with southeastern Queens, where the 1968 plan would work much better than a Van Wyck Expressway line. You will simply serve more people by not being on an expressway. However, there are notable exceptions, like Horace Harding Expressway. Here, the density is on all of the expressway, meaning alternative alignments won't work. This is why ridership on the buses that run on the expressway is high, at 26,000, which is why this is one of the 2 places that I support a median highway line. Anyways, this marks the end of this video. What are your thoughts on potential highway median stations and lines in New York City? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.